This is Lynn Fraser with the Kiloby Center for Recovery, and I'm here today with Dr. Ramkumar, who is an Ayurvedic doctor and works with addiction. And I'm really excited to hear more about this because I know through yoga and meditation and Ayurveda myself that it's a powerful way to work with our physical body and detoxing our body and to bring our body into a state where it's helpful instead of pulling us back. So I'm really excited to hear what it is that you have to say. Maybe you could go ahead and introduce yourself now, and then we'll get into the interview.
Namaste. I am Ramkumar, an Ayurveda physician from India. Ayurveda, the traditional Indian medical knowledge system, which uses, all kinds of natural material to handle a whole range of health issues to restore the harmony and balance within the living body. So I have been in this field for the past 25 years or maybe a little more. And in the last few years, along with a few of my other Ayurveda colleagues, we established a healing village called Vaidya Grama. It is on the outskirts of Coimbatore in southern India, and it's basically a sustainable, eco-friendly, natural healing village based on the principles of Ayurveda and other traditional Indian knowledge systems. We at this village work with patients with all kinds of conditions, starting from the very simple health issues to the more complicated, across all the systems like the digestive, the cardiac, the respiratory, the reproductive, the nervous, the muscular, the skeletal, across all these systems. And of course the mind also, because Ayurveda has a lot to offer where the mind is concerned. It is an experimental work which has over the years benefited patients from all over the world, including a lot of people who are in recovery from different kinds of addiction. We regularly get people coming for either moving away from the source of addiction or having already moved away to improve the quality of their life, to strengthen their system, and to keep the mind strong so that they can stay in recovery. This is in brief the work that we do, and I'm happy to meet you and share whatever little we do with all of you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. You know, one thing that we know is that addiction and all kinds of illness in the body and the mind are complex, and they take a long time to form, and they take a long time to heal. So to have a place where people could go, and do people come and live there for a while and stay in a treatment place?
Yes. People stay with us for periods ranging from a few days to a few weeks, sometimes even a few months, depending on the reason why they are here, and sometimes wanting to spend more time in a natural environment, in a space where they can breathe fresh air, they can eat natural food which is grown within the same space, and work with the body, mind, and spirit so as to enable a better and a deeper healing process.
So what would a typical day be like at your center?
Well, we do encourage people to wake up early, which is not something that is easy for most of our patients. So, and they are woken up with a decoction of herbs which are customized based on their individual need. And so they take that, and then after going through their morning ablutions, we encourage them to spend 1 hour in a group where there's some kind of spiritual work happening, including meditation, including a little bit of silence, a little bit of awareful breathing, and some chanting. So all of this happens for around 1 hour. And then after that, they go back to their respective rooms. They meet the physicians who come around to each room, meeting them, trying to understand what has happened in the previous several hours. And then, based on a schedule, they go in for different kinds of external body treatments, depending on the stage of the treatment that they are in, and depending on their individual need. They do get to have some simple vegetarian breakfast somewhere between 7:30 and 9 in the morning. And then the rest of the morning is devoted to the treatments and a lot of rest. We encourage patients to take a lot of rest because rest is deeply healing. And many of us underestimate the value of rest. In fact, when we talk of rest, people immediately ask us, oh, okay, can we do some reading? And we say, well, yes, but it is better to read a lot less than you would normally do. Then they say, can we talk to people? Well, yes, but the less said, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? We say that, we are human beings and not human doings. So to be is what we need to learn, to be with ourselves, to be in a state of deep rest, deep relaxation with minimum activity. So do activity when required, otherwise take rest. So through the morning, we encourage more of rest, and they also get their lunch anywhere between 12 and 1. And then in the afternoon, we have a short yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is a deep relaxation process. For around half an hour, we do it. And after that, from 2:45 to 4, there is a group interaction with the physicians at our center, where we spend a little time sharing our understanding of living and healing according to Ayurveda, some of the principles of living and healing. And then we also have an extended interactive session where people ask us their doubts, their questions, they share their anxieties, they share the difficulties that they face, and the physicians do their best to address all the concerns. Evening again from 4 to 6 or 4 to 5:30, they are free. They get some light, herbal tea. We don't normally use tea or coffee in our center because that is again a source of dependence. And we are basically trying to encourage all our guests or patients to challenge themselves during their stay here. So whatever they are used to, we try to move them away from it and to see how they respond to not having something that they are used to. Because if the body reacts, like they could get a headache or they could get a lot of restlessness, it means that they are dependent on that source. It can be tea, it can be coffee, it can be a simple shower twice or thrice a day, which can, they feel irritable if they don't get that shower. We tell them not to do any exercise. If they don't get the exercise, they get irritable, which means that they have become dependent on the exercise. So, it's a process of rediscovering themselves through this process. In the evening between 5:30 and 6, we again have another short session of interaction with the doctors, where they share some of the principles of Ayurveda, some of the principles of diet, of lifestyle, etc. There is another spiritual session in the evening for 45 minutes, where again they go through meditation and chanting and silence and breathing and other such practices. Dinner is anywhere between 7 to 8 in their own rooms, where they can actually relate to the food that they eat. They can observe the food, they can taste the food, they can smell the food, which normally does not happen when one eats in a group where we are talking and we are more distracted. So we encourage people to eat alone, except for once in the week when we have what we call a community dinner, where everybody can eat the food together and actually see how different it is as compared to when they eat alone. And finally, we encourage them to go to bed early. Many of them are in bed by 8:30, some are in bed by 9, and get extended hours of sleep in the night. We don't encourage them to sleep in the afternoon or during the daytime, because that creates a lethargy in the system, which is not really conducive to the healing process. But we have no problem if they sleep for many hours at night. It can be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, it doesn't matter, but they can have an extended sleep at night. So this is generally the routine that they follow. We have other simple activities, like we teach them to cook some simple food, simple vegetarian food on certain days in the week. We teach them to make their own decoction of herbs. We encourage them to identify certain herbs that grow in our campus, so a physician takes them through these herbs. So these are activities more to relieve the boredom or the restlessness that people develop when they are with themselves. But ideally, the more time they spend alone with themselves, facing their own fears, their limitations, their emotions, the better it is for them. So this is a typical day. Many of them go through different emotions through the period of their stay here. There are days when they do very well, when their mind is feeling very happy. They are very happy with everything that happens. They love the food. But when the mind is not so happy, those are the days when the food is not so good, or they feel that the food is not so good. They feel that the treatments are not so good, the herbs are not working. So they can actually begin to watch how the mind plays or tricks with everything that they do or do not do. So
Right.
Yeah,
the mind has such an impact on that. Well, one of the things that I'm thinking as you're outlining the day is that it's a huge shift for most people to spend that much time just being present with themselves. And that you've got a lot of encouragement built in. You've got a lovely schedule, and that you're not kind of forcing things. You're allowing people, you're encouraging people. But if someone's jumping out of their skin, then they don't have to just stay with that. They can come and get help.
Absolutely. And they also many a time form their little groups where they support each other through this entire process.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also quite helpful for many of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they hear each other's stories, each other's experiences. They draw strength and they draw energy from that also.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very familiar with meditation. I teach meditation, and I'm somewhat familiar with Ayurveda. I've taken some training in it. But what's your perspective on what Ayurveda has to say about the mind? I know that you use meditation, and you're just talking about some people will have the same kind of a day, but depending on what's happening in their mind, it's a good day or not such a good day. So how do you work with that from an Ayurvedic perspective?
So in Ayurveda, we basically are exploring 3 different aspects when we talk about the mind. The first aspect is trying to help people develop what we call the buddhi, or the discriminating intellect.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to know what is good or what is not so good for us, what we can actually what enables better healing for us, and what creates harm to us, to develop that fine sense of discrimination and to be able to act on it. Because many a time we know that something is not good for us, but we are unable to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So developing that discriminating intellect is one aspect that we need to work with. So that is something we share a lot of thoughts and suggestions with our patients. It can be direct and it can be indirect, because sometimes you just need a small nudge here or a small nudge there to catalyze the process of beginning to think. The second aspect is, we call it dhairya, or developing the fortitude, the courage, the conviction, the determination to stay with the process. Because again, many a time we know what is good with us, but there's an inability to stay with the process. We give up. As you are aware, many of us make New Year resolutions on the 1st of January, and by the 2nd of January, many of those resolutions are broken because of the inability of the mind to stay with this process, to stay with what has been decided. And the third aspect is what we call Atma Vijnanam. These are Sanskrit words, but basically what it means is spending some time learning about the self every day. It is a stagnant mind that becomes a devil's workshop. But if the mind is engaged in a little bit of understanding, a little bit of learning about the self and the connectedness of the self with the universe out there, getting a little more understanding every single day provides food for thought for the entire day. And so we do encourage all our patients to spend a little more time dwelling on these three ideas of a discriminating intellect, of the determination, conviction, willpower, to stay with what the discriminating intellect tells us, and then to also keep learning about the self every day a little bit. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 5 minutes, but at least one new idea a day keeps the mind engaged in understanding this whole body-mind consciousness complex. So this is what Ayurveda in brief tells us about how to work with the mind. And then the actual process of working can range from body treatments, because the body also has an impact on the mind. If the body is at ease, the mind is also at ease. But if the body is constantly drawing attention to itself, then the mind becomes agitated. So we do a lot of external body treatments, internal herbs, which we give several times in a day. So through a combination of the external treatments and the internal herbs, we achieve some level of cleansing of the toxins in the physical body. And it also has its impact on the emotional toxins at a more subtle level. So that happens, and then all these other activities that we do, whether it is the spiritual activities or it's the interactive sessions, all of these also contribute to creating a little more awareness, wherein we can say that it is teaching a person how to fish when he or she is hungry, rather than giving the fish.
Right. Yeah.
Giving them the tools to work with, which can have a more long-lasting impact. So, brief, what we do.
So, if we were to go back to the element of the courage and determination to stay with what you know, can you give some examples about how you might work with people? Because that's really the big one, isn't it?
Yes, and it's very difficult to give an example, because it's mostly a very subtle process through the different activities and discussions that happen while they are with us, and as we understand each one's individual fears and emotions, it is a very customized approach, a very subtle approach, It is not like there are ABC tools that we readily use, but
Right.
can be a multitude of processes based on the individual's needs.
Right. So if we go back to the first one of really developing our intuition and our wisdom, um, so to the thing I really love about Ayurveda is that it's so holistic. It really deals with all of the things that muddy up our mind, for instance,
Yes.
and things that are happening in our body that are contributing to that confusion and things. So when you're in the Western therapy world, CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, is very popular. And one of the ways that people work with that is that they kind of see that they have some false thinking.
Okay.
And so is that something that you would be doing something similar? Like when you're talking about developing the buddhi, what kinds of things do you do there?
So one of the things we do is we try to help people see how most of the time we are engaged in thoughts, words, and deeds that are actually not conducive to us.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always. So, when people ask us, what do we eat? We joke that a simple principle is what you like is not good for you, and what you don't like is excellent for you. While we say this as a joke, many a times it is true.
Mm-hmm.
We are attracted to that which is not necessarily good for us, and we also tend to do that, or we tend to consume that in larger quantities, thereby creating a negative impact on the system. um, there is nothing that is universally good or universally bad, but it becomes good or bad depending on the context in which we consume
Mm-hmm.
and the quantity in which we consume. Um, Many a time in the modern world, we are engaged in excesses. If somebody tells us there is this vitamin that is excellent, we have an overdose of it. And if somebody tells us that there is this other substance which is not good, we tend to eliminate it completely. Now, both are not necessarily good for us. The path of moderation, the middle path, is a safe path when we are healthy. And when we are not doing well, then we might need to consume certain nutritive elements in slightly larger quantities and eliminate certain harmful elements for a short period till we rediscover our health. So these are the sort of sharings that we do with our patients. We try to help them to understand, to discover what is it that occupies their mind. For example, food is an overwhelming occupation for most patients when treated, because there is so little else to do. Their mind is constantly focused on the food. And
Mm-hmm.
they're constantly asking, is this food good? Is that food bad? Can I have more of this? Can I have less of that? And almost on most occasions, most patients tend to get um, dissatisfied with the food in a few days' time,
Mm-hmm.
because most of us are not used to eating the same type of food 3 times a day, cooked in the same kitchen by the same persons for an extended period. These days we want so much of variety, so much of change, that most of us we go out and eat on a normal day, or in a normal week we would have food outside our homes several times in the week, and so that boredom starts creeping in. The mind is getting bored very fast, And there is an element of the mind which keeps telling us that we need variety, we need change. Variety is the spice of life, change is very good. So, getting into a routine, a discipline, a practice becomes extremely difficult for many of us. And so, we try to introduce the idea of staying with a comfortable practice. Whatever each person is comfortable with, some may be comfortable with doing exercise in the gym, some may be comfortable with doing asana practice, some others could do, mindful or awareful breathing for extended periods. Some may choose to go into silence for an extended period. So any practice that they can do persistently and consistently for a reasonable length of time is a great way to bring the mind under control, to build the determination and the conviction in the mind, to enable the discriminating intellect to actually start functioning, to distance the mind from its attachment with the sense objects. The mind is always engaged externally. At some point, these practices can help the mind to turn inwards and thereby, allow the practice to resonate with the entire body-mind consciousness complex. So these are some of the sharings we do. Individually, things change based on people's likes and dislikes initially, because we are all prisoners of our likes and dislikes, if I may say so. But gradually, if we can transcend those likes and dislikes, then we can keep evolving these practices and not allow boredom to creep in. Boredom is a big issue. It's one of the big problems that prevent us from developing the discriminating intellect or the courage or the willpower and the conviction in what we do. It's the boredom that prevents it. So we try to work on all these areas.
Part of what you're doing is removing entertainment for the mind. Like
yes,
boring food, you're not going to be entertained by the food.
Yes.
A simple practice. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
The same routine every day, not much excitement.
Right. Lots of sleep.
We joke that our doctors pray that the Wi-Fi in our center does not work, so that again it reduces the entertainment for the mind.
Right.
We do not have televisions available for people to watch. We encourage people to engage in communication back home to the bare minimum, to the extent that people at home know that they're doing reasonably well, but not to get engaged in trying to resolve issues at home, or trying to find out what is cooking at home, what is the food that the family is eating. Are they, not to go into all the small details, unless or those who are working, not to keep trying to be in control of what is happening back home. We had the head of a big company taking treatment with us, and we were apprehensive whether he will be able to disconnect himself from his work. But he was very clear. He said, I'm closing my computer. I'm not using my mobile phone. I surrender completely to the process. And I believe that my company will do much better in my absence. And that was a very strong statement that he made.
Mm-hmm.
And later he actually told us that it was true that people in his company did much better when he was not there to continuously oversee what they are doing. So sometimes it is our need to be indispensable.
Right.
And it is sometimes a shock to us when we realize that we are not as indispensable as we believe, whether it is at home or at work. And so we try to make ourselves indispensable, which is actually not good for us. And hence it was nice to see the head of a company actually saying that he is not so indispensable as people believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. People have all of these opportunities to really get to know themselves. And sometimes what happens, especially with addiction, is we're trying very hard not to know what's going on inside.
Yes.
How is it that you work with someone who has a lot of shame or who has trauma from childhood or earlier in life? How do you work with that?
So again, there are multiple ways depending on each individual's frame of mind when they are in the treatment with us. The first and the best option is to just give them a supportive environment where they are able to figure it out for themselves, without having to actually depend on sharing with somebody else, because we want to empower people to deal with these situations even when they are back home. So that is one of the ways we try to address these issues. The second is, of course, where required, any one of us are available for them to share some of their shames and fears and guilts and other emotions if they want to. In a gentle way, we are present and we allow them to share with us. Many a time, like I said earlier, they form groups among themselves where they draw energy from each other and suddenly realize that what they are experiencing may seem extremely important for them, but is not as big as they thought until they heard others share their experiences. So sometimes the group sessions are beneficial. Um, we also put a very strong emphasis on being in the present. Um, every one of us have a past. We have a good past and a not so good past. It is important for us to remember that by staying in the past, we are only hurting ourselves. Um, Nobody else is hurt in the process. It is we are primarily hurting ourselves by continuously recollecting what has happened in the past, any kind of shame, any kind of trauma, whatever it is. Yes, we appreciate, we understand the difficulty of going through a trauma, but it is also important for each of us to move forward, because we need to live this life well, we need to live this life happy and healthy. And so we, in different ways, we try to share these understandings through, it could be through stories, it could be through real life incidents, it could be through multiple ways that we try to bring this understanding into people, to be in the present and also not think, many a time patients tell us, oh, if only I had come here a few years earlier. And we say, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You are meant to be here. There is this whole theory of action and result, karma and karma phala. And we are all, going through the results of actions that we have done either a few years earlier in this life or at some point in some lifetime, if we believe in that. But definitely, we are experiencing the results of our actions. For example, if I had an ice cream yesterday, I could possibly have a bad throat today. That is a direct result of an action that I did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by continuing to feel bad about that action, I am not resolving the result of that action. Hence, it is always better to stay with solutions, to stay with methods of resolution, and to remember that we are all human and to err is human. So, we will fall down several times on this journey of life. And we don't need to keep analyzing excessively why did we fall down, what is it that caused us to fall. It is enough to know that there was an action that led to my falling down. The next time, let me be a little more aware and avoid that action. I might still fall down one or two times more, but as I build that awareness within me, the, the falling down reduces considerably. So these are just different examples of the way we try to share with our patients, the way we try to engage them into understanding more about themselves, to understanding that running away from themselves is always a temporary solution. But at some point, if we are able to build the strength, the willpower to face our own deepest emotions, fears, guilt, shame, trauma, etc., the resolution might be easier and more efficient.
Right. So there's a definite element of getting to know ourselves on the action level and thoughts and what's going on. And what about, you've kind of been referring to it many times, like mindfulness, being in the present moment. What about on a spiritual level? You mentioned that they're doing meditation, chanting.
Yeah. So now again, like I said earlier, a lot of this is underlying. It is not in the face.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening on the surface is a lot of herbs, intake of herbs, simple vegetarian diet, food, simple activities. These are this is what a patient directly experiences. But indirectly, that there's a lot of conversation at multiple levels happening. Even a meditation is a conversation, even a breathing is a conversation. And these conversations are helping to build this deeper relationship within.
Mm-hmm.
Is build a strong connect between the body, mind, and consciousness, body, mind, and spirit. And as the three become more strongly and deeply connected, there is a automatic resolution of a lot of issues. Suddenly, some of us wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm not waking up with the same thoughts and the same, the same past and the same idea that I've been waking up for many years with." Or I'm suddenly not having the same dreams that I've been having for many years. So it's all about creating this supportive environment, and within that environment, one is able to awaken the healer within. And once that healer within awakens, then even when we go back into our normal environment, that healer holds our hands. Otherwise, one can have very beautiful results while at our center, but the moment one steps out into the so-called big bad world, one suddenly feels very vulnerable. And in fact, that is one of the fears which patients address with us. They say, here all is well, we are doing very well, we are not, wanting to do anything that is not good for us. But when we go back, how do we manage the situation? And we say if these principles and ideas, are internalized, then when you go back also, it's very difficult to do something wrong consistently and persistently. We may do it once in a while, but that is fine. But we cannot constantly hurt ourselves if the principles are internalized.
Right. Right. So how would somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to come and get that reset, do you have any suggestions for people who are listening that could start to develop some of that internal awareness, the healer within? What might other people do that can't come and stay with you?
Well, I would use the simple word practice.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere in the world, people can adopt practices that are available in the local community. I think there are so many options that are available to us to get into a routine, into a discipline, into a practice, which unfortunately most of us reject. We tend to rebel against any kind of discipline or practice from a very early age in our lives. I think there are so many opportunities for us to get into this a routine, a practice, like from getting up at a reasonably early time to eating food at reasonably consistent times based on our hunger, to even having a bowel movement, to our elimination processes being consistent every day. All of these are practices. Getting into a daily routine, into a daily practice itself is a great place to start. One need not actually go to any center or any place. If one can encourage oneself to get into these practices, and these days you have yoga schools, for example, all over the world, and a good yoga school is a great place to begin a practice, and then you can slowly build upon it. So I think this is a key word.
And the stability of a daily practice and schedule. Can you talk a little bit about the Ayurvedic clock and, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata, and how people might work with that in a daily schedule?
So, would I be able to assume that people understand Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, or do I need to?
I think just an explanation of what they are would help. Yeah.
Well, the universe is a balance of three principles, namely the principle of heat, represented by the sun, the principle of cold, represented by the moon, and the principle of movement, represented by the air or wind. And the same three principles of heat, cold, and movement, or heat can also mean transformation, cold can also mean stability, and movement is all about channelizing or making available what is required for different parts of the body. So the same three principles operate within this body-mind consciousness complex, and when they are in reasonable balance, we are deemed to be healthy and happy. And if any one of them are excessively increased or decreased, then we have some kind of health issues or disease or illness, whatever it is. So in a day also, we can see that the sun dominates through the greater part of the morning and afternoon. And then as we move late into the evening and night, it is the moon or the absence of the moon that dominates. So this is basically what is happening in our body. And so when there is the sun element that is working, that is the time for greater activity. That is the time when, if you eat food, it is transformed better. Any kind of activities, exercise, all of this is better digested by the system. And as one moves late into the evening and the night, it's the time for one to close down, to reduce the level of activity, reduce the intake of food. So it is like a lotus blooms with the sunrise and closes with sunset. It's the same thing that happens in the body. We open up with sunrise and we close with sunset. So if we are able to follow that rhythm of nature, and as the sun removes the external impurity of darkness with the light coming in, if we are also able to wake up and enable all the cleansing, the elimination of the accumulated toxins of the previous day through the various daily cleansing programs like brushing your teeth or applying oil, having bubble movements. perspiration, urination, exercise, all of these are cleansing processes, which if they happen in the early part of the day, then it prepares the body and the mind to receive nourishment. Many a time we wake up and immediately eat, but we are not ready to eat. If you pour clean water into a glass filled with dirty water, the clean water becomes dirty.
Mm-hmm.
So, unless the dirty water is removed, unless the elimination happens, nourishment will not have its full impact on the system. So, cleansing and nourishment are two processes that need to happen every day in us. And in an ideal situation, nourishment should follow cleansing. Nourishment should not be before cleansing. So, if we remember this principle of cleansing and nourishment and engage in all our practices along these two principles, then to a great extent we can enable transformation to happen easily. We can enable us to be grounded and stable, and we can enable easy channeling of the nutrition and toxins in the body. And in the night, we need to give ourselves rest. Though we are conditioned to believe that to rest is to rust, or it's a race against time, so we need to be active all the time. These are all we are conditioned to believe, but the fact is rest is important. A lot of the nourishment happens when we are resting. When we are externally engaged, the body and mind are deprived of nourishment. So this is why the day is the time when we need to be active, when we need to be eating, when we need to be thinking, when we need to be working. And the night is the time when we need to be resting, we need to be sleeping. This is in broad the whole idea of a daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
You can break it down into many smaller categories, but that could take a lot more time.
Right. So one of the principles of breathing is that when we breathe out, we relax. It's the natural process in the body is that we relax more on the exhale, and then we rejuvenate on the inhale. We take in the nourishment on the inhale. So
again, a cleansing and a nourishment.
Yes, same principle, only this is on a wider 24-hour kind of a period.
Yes.
So when you talk about waking up early, the principle that underlies that is the principle of the different parts of the day and what's the natural energy in that time of the day. And going to bed and resting the same.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And if we go slightly deeper into it, we will see that even the systems of the body, the hormones, the enzymes, all the different components that are working, they all have got specific times of the day when they are more active and specific times when they are less active. And if we actually align ourselves to that body rhythm, which is more or less based on the rhythm of nature, we will actually enable these different hormones, enzymes, chemicals, whatever we choose to call them. In the Ayurveda language, it's a very different terminology, but we allow them to work at their optimum best when they are aligned to the rhythm of nature.
Right, right. One of the symptoms of trauma can be that cortisol, which is supposed to be getting lower in the evening, is actually staying high. Makes it hard to sleep, all of that. So that's a natural rhythm that's gotten messed up.
Exactly. And, many of us these days prefer to do a lot of our work at night. Children are studying late into the night, all through their school and university years. And that alters the rhythm considerably. And if one is not having a strong practice to counter this alteration, then it tends to create a lot more disturbance than we can actually imagine.
Mm-hmm. So the wisest thing would be to stay in alignment with the natural body rhythms.
Yes.
And if that's not possible, which it's not always, to try and have enough stability in your practice that you could counteract that.
Yes. I think, and, we keep repeating it, develop practice, develop a simple practice. We don't need to go into very complicated practices right from day one. But if we have a good mentor or a good teacher who can start us off on simple practices, and then gradually, one step at a time, keep building on those practices. I think that is a journey that I would strongly recommend for each and every one of us who have been through, who have all had um, experiences in the past. We can have good experiences and bad experiences. I don't believe there is anybody who's without experience in the past. And so it is a practice which builds the body, which builds the mind, and enables us to counter the past, enables us to respect the past, but not live in the past. To learn from the experiences of the past, but not relive the experiences of the past. The practices really enable.
Mm-hmm. And that it's a gradual process. So once we've gotten kind of off kilter, it takes a while. We have to be patient.
Patience, persistence, perseverance, and prayer is something we keep telling all our patients. The very, the way it's always a puzzle to me why the same word is used for somebody who's not well and for somebody who needs to have tenacity or perseverance.
The word
The
patient.
same. So there must be some meaning in that. It's just like the two words illness and wellness. You replace the I in illness with the we in wellness, and you are fine. You are happy. So if our mind can be more engaged in the we and less engaged in the I, um, perhaps we will experience a much greater level of health and happiness than we ever had experienced before. So again, there is some teacher who very wisely coined these words, illness and wellness.
Right, right. I find it very interesting that Western medical science is doing all of this research now, and really on what's the traditional wisdom of Ayurveda and meditation and different things. And one of the things that they found is that people who are not so self-involved, people that are volunteering specifically is what they've been studying, are much happier and live longer than people who don't. And so again, it just comes back to that principle of having a bigger life than just being absorbed in the thoughts in the mind.
Perhaps a slight change would be who are not so I involved,
Mm-hmm.
because the self, it's more, uh, you know, the I involvement is the little challenging part of this whole journey.
Right.
We sometimes get a little too involved in the I, and we are hardly engaged with the self. So we like to make that distinction between the I, which is more restricted to the body and a little bit of the mind, as opposed to the self, which is about the body, mind, spirit, or body, mind, consciousness. And when the consciousness comes in, then there's a greater sense of balance and harmony.
That's a much larger context than just the I involvement. So as we're coming to the end of our time together, is there anything that you'd like to finish with that you'd like people to really take with them?
Well, a couple of things that we keep repeating here is life is simple, we complicate it.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, it is to remember that we need to live simple, live well, live healthy, live happy. It is also good to remember that many a time we spend half our life destroying our health to create wealth, and the remainder of the life spending the wealth trying to regain health, which
Mm-hmm.
is so easy because we need to keep looking after our health from a very early age. Once we lose it, it takes a lot of effort to regain it. So I think we need to remember that staying in the we space and consistently working with the self, consistently working to develop the discriminating intellect, the um, courage, fortitude, conviction, willpower, and learning every single day is the way forward if we want to stay well and happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's excellent. So how would people get a hold of you? What's your website?
My website is www.vaidyagrama, which is VAIDYAGRAMA dot com.
.com.
www.vaidyagrama.com. Um, my email address is Ramkumar, RAMKUMAR @ Punarnava, PUNARNAVA.org. Ramkumar @punarnava.org.
Okay, great. I'll put those up here on the screen too so that people can see them. But some people are just listening, so it's nice to have them spelled out as well.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating. I love getting into this, the complexity and the holistic nature of Ayurveda and healing. And it really does address all the different layers and levels. And there's some simple things that we can do to actually start helping right away. So I really appreciate you being a part of this.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Go to kilobicenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, for access to the interviews. You can watch them free online, or you could purchase an all-access pass. kilobicenter.com.